Welcome back to another episode of The Indie Side, the podcast for indie authors and creatives. I'm Ellie Jay, the host of The Indie Side, and today I'm here with Richard White, a multi-genre independent author. Richard, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Richard C. White. I am, as Ellie said, a multi-genre author, meaning I've written sci-fi, fantasy, action adventure, fantasy noir, horror, pulp, comic books, media tie-in works. I pretty much, you cut me a check, I'm happy to write it. I have no shame. I'm an author. Uh, and like I said, I primarily sci-fi fantasy, but I have dabbled in just about everything but romance to this point. Uh, no particular stories on the horizon, but you never know.
You never know indeed, especially not with such a range of experience out there already. So, with everything ranging from non-fiction to sci-fi, fantasy, comic books, how do you find your writing process differs from genre to genre? And is there one that is your favourite genre out of all of them?
Um, the writing process obviously will vary. When I do fantasy, I lean back a lot on my roots as a historian. I studied history in college, so if I'm going to write a medieval style fantasy, I'm actually going to do the research and see, what did castles actually look like? What did knights actually wear? What were people actually eating? Because to me, it just irritates me when I read something, and I know it's a fantasy world. It's not our world. Rules are different, but you just look at stuff and go, no. Uh, the 90s drove me nuts because that's when people in comic books were doing these great big oversized people with muscles where muscles did not exist, and they would like draw their fantasy guys with these shoulder spikes that were like a foot long. And I'm thinking, you now think you lift the sword up and you've just sliced half your head off with your own dang, no. I mean, I appreciate, the fantastical part of it, but there needs to be just enough reality that people don't go, yeah, no, that ain't right.
It's got to make sense. There's got to be something
Absolutely.
behind it.
There is, people are willing to suspend their belief, or for a point, but once you push them beyond a point, they're going to go, yeah, no, and find
Mhm.
something else to read or watch. Same problem with movies. Once you see the hero or somebody doing something, and it's only because the rule of stupid to ensure that the plot moves forward, I'm out. I'm done with that movie. And now, obviously, nonfiction. There's a lot of research involved, and it's because everything needs to be. If you're using other people's sources, you got to credit them. You got to seriously. I hate to say it. It's almost like writing a college paper. You got your footnotes, you got your or end notes, and everything needs to be properly credited. Because I mean, I'll do certain amounts of research. I'll take four or five different people's ideas and blend them together to come to a conclusion. But you got to credit the people's work that you're using.
You end up with a whole bibliography page at the end.
Oh, oh, I thought my publisher was going to clobber me when he saw that first, nonfiction thing I submitted to him. Fantasy noir, which is actually becoming my favorite right now because I like the whole idea of blending the old hard boiled detective motif with monsters. I've kind of created a world where it's not monsters as in lurking in the background like a lot of things are. Here, it's a world where it's a blended world where my human detective walks into a bar and there's a troll as the bouncer, and you go down to the docks to meet with an underworld connector, and there's ogres walking, carrying crates off the ships. Uh, so it's very much a blended world of non-human and humans together, and so it's fun trying to make sure that I give each species their own flavor. They aren't just humans that just happen to be big. So it's definitely, but I'm still trying to capture that old like old time radio, the detective movies of the 40s and 50s, that hard boiled, you can almost hear the jazz music playing in the background. And that's been a lot of fun for me because I'm a big fan of old black and white movies and that whole noir kind of feel to stuff.
It sounds like you've kind of created your own genre there with the blend of the two, and the world building for that must be a lot of fun.
Well, it is, and people when I describe this at first, it's like, oh, you're talking about like Harry Dresden, and I'm like, no, I'm not, because Dresden is set in the modern day, and he's dealing with a whole, and trust me, my main hero is nowhere near as competent as Harry Dresden. He's just a guy, and he's just an average guy in over his head for the most part. But it's very much a almost like if you had taken San Francisco or Los Angeles from the 40s and then just threw in vampires, werewolves, and they're normal people that you deal with on a regular basis. And it's been a lot of fun, dealing with, you know, you know, how would people react? Because I mean, the kind of I deal with, people. Some people are very prejudiced against the non-humans. Some of the non-humans pretty much see, a lot of humans as, meals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so the city has a lot of tension in it, and my detective is just trying to make a buck, solving mysteries.
Mm. It all sounds very interesting, and yet it's balanced to be realistic because that is kind of how humans react when they're dealing with someone that's different to them, or different people are going to handle it in a different way, and we have to assume that your non-human characters would have the same kind of attitude, although possibly for different reasons. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of motivations and things to explore within this new genre that you're building.
Yeah, like I said, it's kind of I'm kind of a fond of mashing stuff together. And fantasy allows you to do that, sci-fi allows you to do that, but this one is specifically, I'm like I said, I'm just kind of taking mystery stories and adding a touch of the macabre to them.
Mashing genres up is a lot of fun, and blending genres, exploring different genres. And as a multi genre author myself, I like to include little links between different stories or a common theme. So for me, I tend to use a lot of humour in my books, a lot of satire. Is there a particular way that you like to link your different projects across genres?
Well, as I tell people, outside of my nonfiction, which I obviously I need to write pretty straight. Uh, the best way to know if I wrote the book is to check the level of snark, because my characters tend to be very snarky. They don't. I mean, can they get along with people? Yes. Do they always get along with people? No. One thing also is like most of my fantasy, both the stuff that's out now and the stuff that's going to come out, uh, you're going to find links between it because all of my fantasy is set in the same world, but not in the same area. Because what I did is I created what I call, and with apologies to Ursula Le Guin, I created the Endless Archipelago. Basically, it's a continent that sank, and all you have are just hundreds of islands from where the mountain chain is the only thing that sticks up. And so I may have one adventure taking place on one island. I may have another adventure taking place on another. A third one may be dealing with privateers that sail between islands. So they may or may not encounter each other in passing, just as a nod to the different stories. But you'll hear them talking about the same locations or the same organizations will appear between stories. So the idea is that even though they're different series, you get a feel that that there's a bigger world out there that connects everything.
Yeah, it's a great idea. It's kind of like, I think they call them Easter eggs, or like a reward for readers to hunt out. If they've read a book before, they'll understand the passing reference to somewhere else or someone else in the world. And it's always cool to see that as a reader when you're going through a series of books. And oh yeah, this came up in this book over here, and now it's here, and it really ties it all together.
Yeah, I've found that, and I what kind of gave me that idea is, as I've noticed, there's a few. I was a big I still am a big anime fan, and certain uh, producers they may have 3 or 4 different shows, but you may see some of the same NPCs, for lack of a better word, appearing in one show, and then they'll pop up in another show, and so you just get the feeling again that there's a bigger world out there just beyond the show you're currently watching, and that's something I've kind of incorporated into some of my writing. It's just the idea is that you know there's when person A that I'm talking to walks off and turns the corner, they're not just walking off stage like spear carrier number 2 from the left, like in a play, where he just walks off stage, you never see him again. I want my people, like when they leave the stage, to feel like they're going home or they're going to their job, or that maybe they're traveling to another town. The world needs to feel lived in beyond just what your characters are seeing.
Yeah, it makes it more
It helps immerse the reader in the story.
yeah, makes it feel more real. And as well, if you as a reader or as a writer, you've got attached to certain places, certain characters, it's fun to then see that come up again and know that they have a life and they're still here in the world, and it's not just right, we're finished with that book, bam, story done, we're never going to talk about it again.
Yeah, and that's actually what one of the driving. I'm currently running a Kickstarter for a book called Southwatch Stories. Now, I had one of again, as you mentioned, multi genre. I also have a steampunk series that I'm actually in the middle of writing the second novel. The trouble is, I've created this setting, and I know I will never tell all the stories in this setting. So what I did is I decided to reach out to a number of authors that I know and ask them if they would consider writing a short story set in my world, because again, there's so many different stories you could set, and I have loved the submissions I've gotten, because stuff I hadn't thought of. I mean, we've got one of my friends is writing a rom com. One of my authors is doing a hard boiled detective story. Another one is doing kind of a mercenary group, that's out trying to do good, off the grid, almost a team, if you're familiar with American television. Another person's A couple of people are doing some incredibly dark stories, and I'm like going, yeah, I can't wait to see. I mean, I approved the synopsis, but I'm like going, I got to take a look at this when these come in, because whoo, I mean, if they hit what they're talking about in their synopsis, these could be much darker than I usually like to go. When that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's a personal me, not a, I have to remember, editor me has to be different than writer me. And this is my first time actually, serving as an editor for a project like this, and it's looking like it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's a
The
whole
biggest part's going to be is double checking to make sure that one author doesn't step on the other.
yeah.
So where I may have to do some deconfliction and stuff, but for the most part, they're all there's most of their stories are so unique. I don't think they're likely to overlap much.
Sounds like a really cool concept. And I've done anthologies and edited for them, and you're right, it's a different space to put yourself in when writing. But I've never done one where it's my world and my characters. So seeing someone else take on the world you've created must be really exciting and kind of wow.
Well, and yeah, because what happened was this: I originally created this world for another publisher. My nonfiction book is on world building, so I was approached by the publisher and said, "Would you help us create this shared world universe?" Because they wanted to do kind of a thieves world, where you have a setting and then everybody writes in it. And so I put together this project, and 3 novels came out, and mine was going to be the 4th one when the publisher went out of business. So, but as part of them going out of business, along with getting the rights back to my stories, I requested and was given the story Bible that I had written for the shared world universe. Well, I've had that for about 10 years now, and so I've decided to start doing something with it. So that's where my Dark Side Chronicles on Wings of Steel, which is my first steampunk novel, came out. And then, like I said, and since I've already got this shared world universe here, might as well share it.
Yeah, you've put
And
the time in to make it.
yep, and so that's why Southwatch Stories came about. And the Kickstarter is we'll see what happens. But the good part is whether the Kickstarter funds or not, the book is coming out. So those for those people who are supporting it, even if the Kickstarter doesn't quite turn out the way I hope it does, the book will still come out this fall. So it just means I won't be able to pay the authors as much as they deserve. They're going to get what I can afford.
Well, hopefully that will be a lot, and hopefully the Kickstarter will come through. I can link that underneath the video as well, so people can check it out and support if they feel moved to do so. But
All right, I appreciate that.
either way, we've
Yeah,
got a book coming out.
yeah. It's. I mean, like I said, I'm really like I said, I'm really excited seeing what people are doing, and it. Like I said, it's. Although, and as you just mentioned, having edited anthologies before, sometimes when you're dealing with authors, it's much like herding cats. Okay, where's your story? What's the deadline? What do you mean you forgot how many what your word count was? No, you can't do a 20,000 word story. I'm only paying for this many. I mean, you can do a 20,000 word story, but I'm not paying you more than this much. Yeah. So I did have a couple of people ask if they could go over, and I'm like going within reason. I mean, I am trying not to get the book so thick that I can't afford to print it.
Yeah, you can't write a novel and put that in the anthology. It has to
No,
be
no,
a
no,
short
no.
story.
Yeah.
There are rules.
Yeah. I mean, but if I mean the stories are supposed to be 7,500 words. If you come in at 8,000, I'm not going to complain. If you come in at 14,000, we might have to talk.
Yeah, needs trimming down just a little bit. But
Un poquito.
I suppose the fact that people are writing longer stories is a good sign. It shows they're getting into the project and
Oh, well, yeah, a
enjoying
lot
it.
of people are already asking me if we're going to do a second anthology. So, which I'm certainly hoping we will. Depending on, I mean, I'm hoping that the fans appreciate and will support the anthology because I really would like to do more. And I have a couple other authors who are hoping that if we do a second anthology, that they can get a chance to jump in. So, we'll keep our fingers crossed.
That's the blessing and the curse of anthologies. They spiral. I started
Oh yes.
with my co-publisher Neil Noble. We started Noble J anthologies. We did one volume, and then it became two volumes because we were oversubscribed, and then it became three volumes because we were oversubscribed, and then we stopped because we both had other novels to go and work on. And I still have people messaging me saying, "When are you doing volume 4? I want to be in volume 4." Slow down, slow down. It's great the enthusiasm, but you've got to rein it back in a bit.
Well, yeah, and I have to and I explain to some people because of course, God, like I said, once people know you're an indie, you get all kinds of people wanting to approach you about stuff, especially artists who are always looking for work.
Yes.
Hey, do you need a new cover? Hey, I'm happy, and I'm like, one, I look. First off, I am not a publisher. I am a packager. What I mean by that is uh, like I said, when I do one of my books, I mean, I write it, I hire an artist, I hire an editor, I hire my designer. But I have a press that I work with who does the printing, distribution, and stuff and handles that stuff because where I live is not friendly to small businesses. And since he already had a publishing company going, he kind of picked me up as an imprint under his company. So I do the majority of the work, but then he actually handles the publishing side of the house. So it's kind of the best and worst of both worlds
Mm,
because there's certain things I don't have to deal with, but that also means I work on his schedule
yeah.
because he's got his own stuff that he's doing, so he works me in where he can.
You don't have,
And it's just a lot of it requires a lot of good communication back and forth to make sure that we're both on the same page.
yeah, you don't have complete control over timing and things, and you have to be willing to work around each other.
Yeah, and and since he has the since like I say he's handling the printing, if I need X number of books for a show, I need to give him plenty of time to get the order in. Because printers, sometimes they print and it's there like in 2 days, and sometimes it might be 2 weeks, 3 weeks before they finally get around to doing it, depending on how much you're ordering. Because the smaller the order, the farther down on the priority list you come.
Yeah, you can't rely on it to be done within a certain time frame. Doesn't matter what the time frame is, you can't rely on it being done in
Oh
that.
no, no, you can give the printer a month notice, and maybe they'll make it, and maybe they won't.
Depends how
Uh,
busy they are.
yeah, because I know they do. They what they do, they gang press, like so like if they've got like 25 orders that are all short, they'll wait and just run all of them at the same time and just print them all out, one behind the other. But they won't dedicate a press to any one of those because it wouldn't make sense to do that shorter run. So it's just a matter of you work around the joys of the system, because unless I want to set up a printing press in my basement, which I think my wife would clobber me if I did something like that. I mean, she's willing to put up with my writing for and I say that jokingly. She's been incredibly supportive of my writing, but it's like any hobbyist. If you're not in the hobby, you're never sure why people are drawn to it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I don't, I mean, even though to me this is a profession, it's still hard to explain to people who aren't in the profession.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard for people to get their heads round. It's hard enough for people to understand when you're there furiously typing on the keyboard and talking to yourself and other things that writers do without going full hog and trying to set up a publisher. I mean, I haven't got
Yes,
room for a indie press anyway because my house is full of books.
yes. Yeah, I like to, when I do my dedications, I usually dedicate it to my wonderful wife, who puts up with seeing the back of my head for many hours at a time.
You've got to be patient to put up with a writer.
Yes, yes. Ah,
Well, with so much that we've talked about with your list of different genres, I noticed when you sent me your list of projects, you've also worked in a range of forms, which we've sort of touched on as well, with the comic books and then novels, short stories. Which came first, and why did you decide to try so many different forms?
I started out. Well, as I like to tell people, I've been a professional writer for 50 plus years. I started out when I was 15, working for a local newspaper. I was their sports reporter. I basically covered everything at the school because the editor did not want to have to go up to the school and watch the concerts and the plays and all the basketball games. And since I was already on several of the sports teams, I just wound up taking over writing the articles for the first the men's teams and then all the teams. Uh, and then after I went to college, I wound up working at the college radio station, doing sports interviews and writing the copy that the on air DJs would then read. When I joined the Army, I was an analyst reporter, and then and as I just mentioned earlier, I was a technical writer for 25 years. So I I basically I'm so used to, I mean, pretty much whatever the format is, I tend to adapt to it rather quickly. I started out, my first professional gig was doing comic books back in the 90s. I was doing a small press. We released 5 books, and then there was called the Great Black and White Implosion, I'm the 80s was the black and white explosion when you pretty much you if you put out a comic book it was selling. The 90s is when the market corrected, and I watched my sales. I mean, people liked my book, but just the retailers just weren't able to get it, or just couldn't justify with all of the stuff that was coming out. They had to start getting pickier. And so I wound up closing up shop after 3 years. And but then I got one the gentleman who was actually the letterer on my comic book, got a job working at a publisher in New York. They were doing media tie-in works, and they happened to have uh, the Marvel license. So one day I was at home and I got a phone call from my the editor, and he goes, "Rich, are you a fan of the Incredible Hulk?" And I went, "Yeah, I like the Hulk." He goes, "Great, we just had somebody drop out of an anthology. Can you send me a pitch for a Hulk story?" And I'm like, "Sure," because rule one, if an editor says, "Can you do?" the answer is always yes, and then you figure out how to do it.
Take the opportunity, especially when it's not as big
Absolutely.
as Marvel.
So now, and even though he was a friend of mine, it that didn't matter because I still had to put in a professional pitch, and Marvel had to sign off on it. Well, they liked my pitch, but they had just bought a story that was very similar to what I was doing. So, but they said, "But you know what, Rich? We don't have Hulk as an Avenger story. Would you write that?" And I'm thinking, okay, Hulk was in Avengers 1 and got kicked out in Avengers 2. That doesn't give me a lot to work with. I'm basically dealing with two comic books. So I wound up writing what I call Avengers One and a Half, which became Assault on Avengers Mansion. And Marvel liked it, bought the story. It came out, and then because I wrote for the Hulk, I got a chance to pitch a Star Trek story, and then I wound up picking up a novel. I got to novelize Gauntlet: Dark Legacy, which is a video game which does not have a lot of plot. Um, I mean, Wizard needs food badly is pretty much the only memorable line, in the entire game. And then I wound up getting to write for Doctor Who, and several other. I've had several other opportunities, some successful, some not, to write for other franchises. So, and I love doing media tie-in work because I mean, I'm actually getting to write about shows and characters that I grew up with, or just absolutely loved watching, the movies and stuff. But I will say experiences can be vary widely in media tie-in because when I did the Gauntlet book, we were talking with Midway Enterprise, and I said, "Well, what is the name of the wizard?" Whatever you want to call him. And the elf is Elf. Great. So, is there anything I should know? Oh, okay, this and this. Okay, everything. And so, basically, the novel came out, and it's 5% about the game and 95% from me. That would never happen with Doctor Who
No, they take
or
that
Star Trek.
far too seriously for you to mess
Oh,
around with.
oh, and people say Trekkies are obsessive. They have nothing on Whovians. I'm telling you right now.
Well, since you have such a great range of experience, I also wanted to ask you, and we did kind of talk about this off camera, so I might be cheating a bit here, but is there anything that you've either haven't tried but you want to, or that you would just not try?
Um, as I like to tell people, if you cut me a check, I will write it. I'm an author. I have no shame. However, to following up on that, one, I swore I would never do horror until I did. I was that was a me- It was a media tie-in project. I was working for a game company, and they have a city of pirates, and the world is just when you're dealing with a city that's basically built around piracy, things just tend to go dark. And I started out writing this one story, and all of a sudden it morphed into basically being told through the eyes of a serial killer. And so it was a first person story, but I was and I'm like going, all I can say is thank God for Criminal Minds and NCIS, because I went into some dark places in my mind where I was not comfortable writing that story.
Sometimes
And then
we.
the second story I wound up doing for them wound up being almost a Lovecraftian horror story, and I'm like and my third story, if they hadn't if they had continued publishing shorts, was going to be a if you're familiar with the song Brandy uh, it was real popular in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Uh, the idea is that I basically had this young lady who worked at the bars in this town, and she was being true to her lover, but she would occasionally invite sailors home for dinner, but not for them to eat. Her mom was a carnivorous mermaid,
Uh-huh.
so she would invite sailors home. Her mom would have dinner,
Hmm.
and and again, bodies would just or not turn up, depending on how hungry she was. And people just write it off. Just another body in the bay. Okay. So that was how she. But it was so I was basically taking a certain. I figured people would know the song. They would have certain expectations, and then at the very end, we were going to go gotcha.
Uh,
And I really need to go ahead and write that story anyway, and maybe not use their setting, but I think it still would be a fun one to pitch. I have never written romance. Again, no one's asked me to, but honestly, that one's gonna be the harder one to do because, maybe I'm just old-fashioned or something, but I can't even read those novels without, blushing. I cannot imagine writing one, especially the ones modern day,
hmm.
because let's just say there is no more fade to black, shut the door, and, I'm not sure I'm real comfortable writing,
You're not looking to join the spicy book talk community
no, no,
anytime
no.
soon.
There's certain levels of heat that I'm probably much less. I mean, could I do it? Yes, yes, I could. Would I probably write it under a pseudonym? Absolutely, yes, I would. I mean that's one thing I've always said is that people ask me at shows like, is your book uh, kid friendly? And I'm like, okay, I mean, like fantasy and stuff. There's a lot of fighting, but I don't go into gory details, and I don't, you know, again, I'm much more of a fade to black kind of person. So there's really nothing in there that kids couldn't read. The problem is I don't write at a kid level. So if your kid's reading at a high school age, you could probably read my books without any trouble. If they're, but if you're looking for like a middle grader or something like that, yeah, that's not. I haven't. I'm trying to write some stuff like that. I have a wonderful story I've been working on that because I really need to have something for tweens, because I get a lot of people coming to my shows going, "Oh, I'm really looking for something for my 12-year-old daughter." Not really, but so if I could just get one book out there, just if again, not that I'd expect to sell it, I would not expect it to be an Amazon bestseller or whatever, but just simply to say, "Oh yes, I have this." Keeps the parents that way the parents can look at my stuff, kids can look at this, and everybody's happy.
It keeps people happy, and it's nice to see children actively looking for new things to read. But I get the same thing at shows, and I always tell parents, well, it's up to you if it's kid friendly because it depends on your kid and it depends on what your rules for your kid are. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
people die, so your kid's got to be okay with the fact that this guy they've spent the last few chapters reading about might get shot. And yeah, there's nothing gory in there. There's no sex in there. Depends how comfortable your parents are with mild swearing, because I'm afraid some of my characters do. run away with
Oh,
that side of
so fun.
things a little bit. Yeah, so I always say it depends on the parent and the kid, and it's up to the
Yeah,
family to decide that.
yeah. For me, it's usually just what a reading level they're at
Mm,
because it's, if they're reading at a certain level, because the trouble is I have a hard time judging because I started reading at a very young age, and I was reading. Okay, I'm bragging on myself, but I was reading at a high school level in third grade. By junior high, I was reading, adult novels, and adult by not as in smutty, but adult as in
mm,
just
yeah.
more sophisticated. Uh, well, maybe some nuttiness would. We don't tell mom about that. But yeah, no, it was like I said. So if you're reading at an advanced reader level, kids would have no trouble reading my stuff. But so I leave it up to the parent. You know what reading level your kid is at. But I generally tell people I write for upper high school to college is pretty much my baseline. Maybe I'm overselling myself. I don't know. It's
It's very hard
I
to
like to think
judge.
I'm more sophisticated, but I might not be. I let my reviewers decide that.
It is very hard to judge what level people are at and what they expect a book of that level to be like, especially, you don't know what kind of education the child's had, you don't know how much they read, and you don't know if they're going to be reading it themselves or is the parent going to read it out loud to them. Like,
Hmm.
what is going on with it?
Right. Yeah, I would generally say most of my books are probably not appropriate for 10 and under.
Mm,
Again, it's not because I'm doing anything that over the top, but yeah, I mean, I like I my plots are not quite that straightforward as most younger readers would be.
yeah, it's too complicated for some of them to hold all the details in their mind or even understand what's going on a lot of the time if it gets too
Hmm.
convoluted.
Yeah, so like I said, so horror was something I didn't think I'd write. Romance is something I haven't tried to write. Doesn't mean I won't, but I haven't tried it yet. So other than that, pretty much everything else is on the table as far as I'm concerned.
Why not?
The worst I could do is try to write it and go, yeah, this ain't working.
Yeah. Any opportunity is worth a try. If it's not working, it's not
Absolutely.
working, but
Yeah,
it's
because
always anything.
like I said, you never tell an editor no because you never know if they're going to come back, and never say I won't do X because you're going to surprise yourself. I mean, because I swore I would never write horror until I did, and it wasn't even a request for a horror story. It just went. I went from dark fantasy to horror in a hurry.
Sometimes the story knows where it wants to go and just got to go with it. So
Exactly.
keep an open mind when the opportunity comes
Those
along.
characters just don't behave.
No, they never will. They never will. Well, moving slightly away from writing now and the forms and the genres that we've explored, I wanted to talk a little bit about Writer Beware, which is something I know you're a part of and you help lead. Um, I've experienced Writer Beware online because I'm an indie author trying to stay safe of scams, and there are so many. But for those who haven't seen Writer Beware before, what is Writer Beware?
Okay. In a nutshell, Writer Beware is the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association's anti-scam committee. It was originally started with by A.C. Crispin and Victoria Strauss, working with a number of other authors and such to try and I help other authors identify, and I had to say it this way to keep our lawyers happy, less than helpful people out there who are trying to separate authors from their money and return little to no value. Um, because not everybody out there that we do beware about is a scammer. And because some people are just well intentioned and have no idea what they're doing.
Hmm.
Small press, it's not so much anymore, but over the years, we've had a number of small presses come and go, and what typically happens or used to happen, it's kind of we don't see it as much now that independent authors have become more prominent. That people would try to get published, couldn't get published, so they decided it was obviously big, big publishing, just trying to stick it to the small guy. So I'm going to start my own press and help other people get published without a clue what they were doing. So they would bring in a few people, they would publish their books, they would start doing well, then they would start bringing in more authors and more authors. And now all of a sudden, now they're trying to juggle a whole bunch of stuff. Plus, they're not getting their own writing done anymore. And then something happens, like, oh, I don't know, the car breaks down,
Mm-hmm.
and the family doesn't have enough money to cover it. But I've got this money over here in this company. I'll just transfer some money over, and I'll make sure to put the money back. Except the money doesn't come back, and then all of a sudden they start taking this person's royalties to pay that person, and things just kind of get into what we call a death spiral, where they get behind, they're embarrassed, they don't want to admit that there's a problem, and the communication breaks down. And then the next thing you know, the the authors now are starting to talk to each other and emailing back and forth, and everybody's complaining and everybody's shooting nasty emails to the publisher wanting to know, hey, where's my money, what's up with my book, when's it getting published, yada yada yada. And then the publisher decides, screw it, I don't need to do this anymore, and they quit. They shut down the company. Some have gone so far as to change their email, change their phone number,
Mm-hmm.
so you could, and literally they go, radio silent. Well, what happens now is, if that publisher, and a lot of them wrote really bad contracts because they didn't know what they were doing. Again,
Yeah.
they were pretty much amateurs. They never revert the stories back to the authors. So that means that the author can't just go out and publish their own story because they don't own the rights to it. No other publisher is going to pick up this story because you don't own the rights to your story. Somebody else does. Because say decided not to tell a publisher that somebody else, that you had sold the story to another press and got it reverted, or like had something in the contract that said, like, okay, if you haven't sold any books in 3 years, I get my rights back. Then that publisher takes your story and it gets picked up by Netflix for their next thing. And everybody's moving forward, and people are talking six-figure deals and yada yada yada. And then all of a sudden the original publisher shows up and goes, that's my story, I get my piece of the pie.
Hmm.
So sure, I mean, if it's a good enough story and Netflix is big enough, they'll probably just pay that publisher a certain amount of money to shut up and go away, and and let's do, give me the rights. But a lot of publishers don't even want to take that chance because it's just a headache waiting to happen. So if you can't prove that your book is free and clear, they won't even consider talking to you about it, uh, and for their own protection. So again, this wasn't somebody who set out to be a scammer, but in the end, it was the same effect. You've wasted time, you've wasted money, and you may or may not have your rights for that story anymore, and nobody's happy.
Yeah, they're not all malicious, but they still cause a lot of trouble for people. They still piss off a lot of people because, you know, I was at an event and I spoke to someone who came up and said that he'd be interested in doing book events as well, but he couldn't because he couldn't get the copies of his book because he had printed them with a press that was now out of business. So they had all these new copies in the plastic wrap in boxes in their warehouse that he didn't have the rights to, so he couldn't get them. They were never going to do anything with because the company doesn't exist anymore. You
Hmm.
can't sell them. It's just stuck in limbo forever.
Yeah, I mean, and that is the, and That's one of the problems. Now, are there people out there actively trying to separate you from your money? Yes, yes, there are. And if you're an indie author, you all you got to do is look in your email box, and you know that all you got to do is say, put up your cover art, and you'll have 14 people writing you about. Oh, and I also do artwork, and of those, 13 of them are probably AI bots. Uh, and the other person may or may not actually be an artist, or made, or I don't know how many offers I get. Oh, recently I got an offer to go to the Bologna Children's Book Festival, which is nice, except I don't write children's books. So, what book of mine are you planning on displaying there for a price?
Hmm.
Or I get offers from book clubs. Recently, I got an invitation to be featured at a romantasy. Like, remember, I don't write romance. A romantasy book club wanted to feature my book. Now, never they didn't say which book.
They never do.
And I've gotten actually one that said, something something we would like to talk about, and then literally
Insert
was
book
bracket
here.
insert book name here, close bracket. So their mail merger just failed.
Yeah.
So and I'm like going, yeah, you didn't even try. I mean, come on.
They do the, what annoys me is how many scammers for indie authors do the bare minimum. They don't do any research, so they don't know what genre you write. They don't bother to put your name or your book name. Some of them, I get them calling me by username on Twitter. Well, that's not my name. You've just ripped that straight from my social media and sent it. Come on, if you're going to try and get people to pay you, make an effort.
But again, what again, they're counting on the volume. I mean,
Mm,
especially now that since email is cheap, they can send out 4 million before they get before that particular email address gets shut down, and then they go on to the next one. But all they need is like 5 or 6 people to respond. So they can afford a horrible return on investment, because if they get one or two, they've probably paid for everything that they've done up to that point. Uh, but yeah, bad age. Right now, there's a big thing going around where they got bots that are pretending to be legitimate agents, reaching out to people, and you look at it, and everything looks good until you double check things like double like so and so, and you look them up, and they actually are an agent at this particular agency and things like that. But if you look at the email address, it's usually like from a .gmail,
mm,
and I'm sorry, if they're sending legitimate emails, they're going to be from dot whatever that agency is, .com. You know, people, or like, or you look closely and it looks like everything, except like they'll have replaced an O with a zero, or they'll have slightly misspelled the name. Like if somebody's last name has a AI, it'll be IA in the email address, or in the link that they want you to click on. So, and they'll actually have spoofed. They will actually have gone in there and copied the page from the agency. So when you click on it, it looks like everything's right, except that the URL is wrong, and all the links there go to their URL. So you think you're talking to somebody from CMA, or Jabberwocky agency or somewhere, and it really isn't. But again, they're doing little things because they're counting on you being so excited that your book may be getting picked up by somebody. Somebody here is validating my existence as an author, because we all love our babies, and but and a lot of people just, they're like, oh my god, this is great, I got an 8, and like going, wait, slow down, take a breath. Wh- because honestly, unless you are someone like, Jessica Alba, or maybe you're Captain Sully and just landed a plane in the Hudson. You know, I have no doubt that before Captain Sully could get out of the plane, at at least 6 agents were trying to hook him up to get his memoir about how he landed that plane in the Hudson after his engine got hit by that goose. But that's because they're jumping on something that happened right now, or else you're somebody so important. You just won the Oscar. So, of course, everybody's going to want to do your memoir. And the agents are going to be trying to sign you up but the average Joe on the street, agents get. We had one agent on Twitter just posted. She literally just started and she posted her first month's submissions to her. 2,700 people wrote her in 1 month. They have plenty of people to pick and choose from. They're not going hunting for people
No.
unless, like I said, you're famous, infamous, or they just happened to read your thing somewhere and fell in love. But that one, and that's the problem is every so often somebody gets picked up. Like somebody was a fan fiction author, somebody read their stuff. Hey, if you'd be able to can you shave the serial numbers off that and rewrite it? I would be happy to publish you. People jump onto that and hold it up and say, see, it can happen. Yes, it can.
Mhm.
That's called being struck by lightning.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often.
It it doesn't happen often. And the trouble is, but people take these onesie twosies and hold it up and say, it could happen to you if you just come with my agency.
Mm,
And uh-huh. Yeah, no.
no, no, it's such a red flag as well when they're reaching out to you, especially if they're reaching out to you on social media. I had
Oh.
a friend that I had to warn. I had to. It was bad because I felt like I was crushing his dreams because he contacted me saying, "I've got an agent. I've got an agent," and it turned out to be somebody who DM'd him on Twitter. And it was a legitimate agent looking profile, it was a legitimate person who existed. But if you go
Hmm.
back 2 months in that profile's reply, they used to have a different username of a different person that they were pretending to be. Yeah, your agent isn't going to be DMing you on Twitter asking to read your stuff and then represent you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, now I've been on social media for years. So I have people some people kind of know me. I am not some big person with 430 million followers. But I tend to focus on keeping up with editors, agents, things like that. So often I'll get into a chat with one of them, or we'll be chatting, not DMing, but chatting on in the public, and I'll get a thing that says, hey, you know um, I kind of like the way if you write like you chat here. Next time you got something, shoot me a thing, send me a submission and say I talked to you here on Twitter. Now that's legit for the most part. Again, you got to look them up, as you said. But if you have developed a rapport with someone and they say, "Send me something if you got something in this," say, "Hey, if you happen to write this, send me a pitch." Sending you a pitch is that's what agents want. They're looking for the pitches. If somebody just came up to you and said, "Hey, I would like to be your agent," you haven't even read my stuff yet. How could you be you don't even have a clue what I write.
Yeah, it's when it comes out of nowhere and it doesn't quite make sense for them to be saying that you have to start thinking twice.
Oh, and I love it when I get some of these. Oh man, some of the come-ons that you get like in the email. Oh my gosh, I got this one the other day, and it was a wonderful review of my book. And it was only at the very end. It goes, but we think your book should get more, visibility. And if you just contact us, we got strategies we'd like to talk to you. And I mean, I would really love to take that review, that letter, and just cut that bottom paragraph off and post that up as a review of my book. But I also know one, it was probably written by AI because all they had done is take a lot of the stuff that was there was just from the Amazon,
Yeah, just
where
reworked the
they put up a little blurb
synopsis.
about it. And two, the book hadn't come out yet. It was actually coming out in 2 weeks.
But I
So
haven't read it.
how did, and I know you weren't one of the people I sent an ARC to. So how did you review my book if it's not available to be reviewed?
Something doesn't add up.
No, but I mean, but at face value, I was like, oh, really? This. I mean, I like I said, it was probably though the best written review I've ever gotten of any of my books, and I would really love to use it, but it's all fake.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just feel really scammy myself, trying to use this to encourage other people to read my book. But dang, I really wish I could because it was a great review.
Yeah, that's the trouble. You feel bad about it. And I get ones who are really excited. They're follow up emailing saying, I've read your book. I've read your book. Can I share my thoughts? Can I share my thoughts? You get like 4 or 5 emails from them. Why don't real readers do that?
Or book clubs.
Hmm,
We would love to feature your book. Great. That's what book clubs do. They all get together, they buy the books, they read them, they talk about them. Fantastic. I mean, you don't need my permission
you
to
certainly
read
do.
my book. But then it turns out that either A, they want you to contribute money toward the club, to help offset some expenses, or B, they and I just read this the other day. They'd reached out to somebody, wanted to do, and of course he thought originally they were legit, and then they wanted him to send a PDF so that he could share the PDF with all 47 members of the book club. And I'm like, I'm not here to give out free books to a book club.
No, book clubs.
And first off, which tells you A, the book club doesn't exist, and B, he's probably, I don't know if it's somebody, just if it's a pirate site. Basically, I figure it's if he's legitimately asking for a PDF, then it's probably a pirate site where they're just going to throw it up there and let anybody read it for free, which does nothing for my sales.
Nothing for the author in that whatsoever. They're either going to
So yeah,
pirate it
ebooks have
or.
been a ebooks are a benefit and a bane of authors
Mm,
because they're so easy. I mean, it's a great way for people to read them. It's also a great way for people to read them without paying for them.
yeah, yeah. Or for people who get like a PDF or an EPUB and they run it through AI, put their own name on the cover,
Yeah,
and
that's a
go,
whole nother ball of wax. Yes, and I know the Anthropic settlement, but honestly, the settlement is a drop in the bucket for the money that they're going to make
hmm,
on the back end. So, I have a few crumbs here. Sorry we pirated your stuff. Here's a couple of bucks. Go away. Don't bother me, kid.
such a great project for raising awareness for authors. Now, one of the things I like to mention is all the new projects that people have coming up when they come on the show. And I believe you mentioned that you're planning to have 4 or 5 new releases this year, which must be keeping you incredibly busy. I don't know how you keep up with that. So, what are some of these projects and when are we hoping to see them?
The good part is a lot of this stuff is books I wrote or wrote the last year or two, and now they're finally getting through the editing process, and hopefully we'll be getting the designers going to work here soon. Recently, I had Cry Havoc, as I mentioned, which just came out on the 31st of March. That was an action adventure story. It's my homage to the golden age of comics, where I've taken some characters that have fallen into public domain and reintroducing them. So what I've done is it's a novella series at first, because what I'm doing is I'm giving each one of the characters their own novella. Because again, 80-year-old character, I want to reintroduce them and give them a chance to shine. And then in the third book that will be coming out in a couple of years is when I bring all 6 characters together to form a team. But this way, instead of throwing them all together in the first book where you don't know who any of these people are, I'm giving each one a chance to shine before muddling up with a team up. So I'm kind of calling it my own Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've got my Iron Man movie, my Thor movie, my Hulk movie, and then eventually I'll do the Avengers. Absolutely. And then what's over at the editor right now? This is kind of my year of public domain stories because it was just kind of a nice breather between some of my other projects. I have Rima, the Emerald Forest, which is based off of a 1904 novel called Green Mansions, where you have Rima, who is a jungle girl who's in Venezuela. It was, like I said, the original novel was written in 1904, but I'm bringing back the character. And beyond that, another one is called Crystal Tresses in the Sky, which is, again, another homage to the golden age of comics, only this one is space opera. So I've taken 7 characters who were in space or science comics back during the 40s and have fallen into public domain, and so now I'm using them. I love the artwork because each one of these stories I hired 7 different artists to do the front pieces, because sure, it's public domain. I could have just taken the original comic book pages and but I thought no, because some of the art is and because again, published, the printing process back then was a little shaky, so sometimes color. Oh yeah, and sometimes the colors shifted and things. So I just figured, let's get a modern look at old characters, and so basically hired 7 different artists to put their spin on the characters, and I'm very, very excited to share not only the cover art but the interior art, as we get closer to publication. And then I have Chasing Shadows, which, as you mentioned, I have Chasing Danger, my fantasy noir. Chasing Shadows is a follow-up sequel, not really a sequel. It's a collection of 9 short stories where I'm basically these were story ideas I had that weren't really big enough to turn into novellas, so I just wrote them up as short stories to put a little more a little more Theron Chase lore out there.
Wow, so as I said, so many things going on, which is brilliant. General, thank you for coming today. It's been wonderful to talk. And that concludes this episode of the Indie Side.